Good morning. Hope you're having a great week. It's Tuesday, November 11th, 6:18 a.m. Central Standard Time. Local time here in Kentucky. I'm on Interstate 24 eastbound at a way station in Kentucky, coming in from Illinois. I just took my 10-hour break and about to start driving. So what's the plan? A second here, let me get out of this spot. Ooh, that's pretty tight. Great. As soon as I start rolling, the ABS light comes on. So I'm going to roll across the way station with the ABS light on. What is going on with the air? There's still air filling up something. I can hear it. All right, now it's starting to slow down. Maybe it just took the trailer a second to fill up the air system.
In a quarter mile, take around I-24 East.
Whenever the air system, there's a whole bunch of air connectors here in the right in front of the driver compartment, and whenever it's hissing, just a second here. There's a stop sign right here. I'm gonna reconnect my airline. Throw my four ways on. Actually, you know what? The ABS light on the trailer went out, but it's still on my dash. So let me reconnect the electrical line. Now it's back on. Awesome. It won't go out. It did this last night. Hopefully nobody's at the way station doing anything. No, but hopefully nobody's paying attention. My ABS light's on. We'll see if it, the ABS sensors, whenever, oh great, there's someone sitting in this truck with their lights on. And I've got a damn ABS light on. Oh sweet, he's looking down at his console.
Take the ramp to I-24 East, then merge onto I-24 East.
Oh my goodness, the drama. So my auto air light just came on, indicating that the auto air system is airing something up. So all kinds of issues just started with the trailer right when I start to drive away. I did a pre-trip inspection and none of this stuff was happening, but as soon as I start driving, All kinds of lights come on the trailer. I'm not hearing a hissing sound anymore. So whatever is going on with the auto air system, it's minor. So we'll see if the light goes out here in a few minutes. And ABS is an electrical system. And whenever it gets wet or it gets cold or it gets anything on it, it acts up. So whenever you're parked overnight, it is normal for the ABS system to like error until you drive. Like usually the ABS errors will clear just driving like a very short distance. Just pulling forward a couple of feet will usually clear ABS errors. And last night, about an hour before I stopped, it was about 2 hours before I stopped for my 10-hour break, I went over a pretty rough bridge where the bridge connectors were pretty rough in Illinois. And the ABS error light came on when I went over that. And I was like, all right, well, it'll go back out in a second. And it didn't. It stayed on all the way until I got to that way station right there where I parked for my 10-hour break. So whenever I parked, I checked to see if it was just a loose electrical connection, which is usually what happens whenever you go over a big pothole. And I disconnected the electrical line, reconnected it, and the error cleared on the trailer and on my dash. So I was like, all right, electrical line just came loose whenever I went over that pothole. And now ABS lights back on again, dash is on, errors on the dash again. And disconnecting and reconnecting the electrical line is not fixing it any longer. Oh my goodness, the drama. So the auto air light has gone out. So the air system is full. That's good, but we still have the ABS error. Let's talk about the coolant system. Let's talk about the problem with the coolant system. So let me tell you the big long story of the coolant system. So about 2.5 years ago, I think it was approximately 2.5 years ago, I started getting a slow coolant leak to where I was putting in maybe a half a gallon a month. And I had no idea where the leak was coming from. Couldn't find it. It was such a slow leak. And I did some research on how to find coolant leaks and stuff like that. And I found out that there was this sealant stuff that you can put in the coolant system that'll seal up leaks. They also make some for oil systems. So if you have a leak in your oil system or your coolant system, you can put this stuff in there and it'll basically clog up the leak. So I put some in, and the leak stopped. And then like a year later, I started leaking coolant again. I was like, all right, I got a new leak, or the seal on the old leak is, failed. The K-seal on it, maybe it failed or whatever. So I was like, no big deal. I'll buy some more K-seal. So I got some more K-seal, put it in there, and it had zero effect on the leak. And I kept trying to find the leak, and I couldn't. So I just kept putting in coolant. It was a fairly slow leak, like a half a gallon every couple weeks. It was a faster leak than the last time. It was more than half a gallon a month. And that leak kept getting worse and worse. And then all of a sudden, abruptly, when I was, after I delivered that repower load, that SOS load, it just started leaking like crazy. Like, it was like half a gallon over a single night. Just parking on my 10-hour break, I topped off the coolant before I started my break. And at the end of my break, it had gone from maximum level all the way down to minimum level, which is about a half a gallon. And I finally found the source of that leak because it was leaking so much. I could actually see where it was leaking from. And it was the rubber hose coming out of the coolant reservoir. The two clamps were loose. So I just tightened those up, and it stopped leaking oil while it was sitting there. Or not oil, coolant, I'm sorry. It stopped leaking coolant while it was sitting there. So then I tested when I was driving. And I drove across town, and I didn't lose a drop of coolant driving across town. So I thought that fixed it. But driving across town didn't really put much stress on the engine. I was empty. I didn't drive for very long. It wasn't really a thorough test. So I was like, we'll see whenever I actually get a load and drive for a couple hours and the engine gets hot. We'll see what happens. And it started dumping oil. Or not oil, coolant. I keep saying oil, coolant. So driving from Omaha, Nebraska to St. Louis, Missouri, or St. Louis, actually St. Louis, East St. Louis, Illinois, is where I topped off fuel. When I checked coolant, when I got fuel, it was down at the minimum level. So it had lost a half a gallon in that 500-mile drive from Omaha to St. Louis. So I topped it off again, and then I drove from St. Louis to that way station where I just parked at. And it went down to the minimum level again, lost a half a gallon in 200 miles. The leak seems to be stopping or slowing down a lot once it gets down around that minimum level on the coolant. And so whenever I got to the way station last night, I topped off the coolant again. And just sitting there overnight without the engine running, I'm trying to remember. if the coolant leaked overnight. Actually, you know what? I don't know whether or not it leaked overnight because I did not fill it up. Because I did not have any more coolant. Or no, you know what? I can't remember if I filled it up last night. I did fill it up this morning, and I tested it out. So I'm not sure if it leaks coolant while it's just sitting without the engine running. I haven't retested that. But I did test it. I topped it off this morning. I'm out of coolant now, but I topped it off this morning, and then I idled the truck for an hour. And just idling the truck for an hour, it went from full down to the minimum level. So it doesn't seem to matter whether the truck is idling or I'm driving, the coolant drains down to the minimum level. And then the drain seems to stop right there, just above minimum. It leaves enough coolant in there that it doesn't like trigger a low coolant alarm or anything like that. But it just kind of stops at that spot. I have no idea why it stops at that spot. That makes me think that there's like a crack in the coolant reservoir. But I'm 99.9% certain that that's not the case because I can see where the coolant is leaking, the approximate area, and it is not anywhere close to the coolant reservoir. It is soaking wet underneath the EGR. I think it's I thought it was the alternator, but it's actually, I'm pretty sure it's the starter that's right underneath the EGR on the back side of the engine toward the driver compartment. The starter is covered in coolant. It's completely dry above the EGR. It's soaking wet below the EGR. Like everything's covered in coolant underneath there, and I can't tell where exactly it's coming from. It's so hard to get into that area. It's back behind a whole bunch of stuff. And I'm concerned about two things with this coolant leak. Number one is how much it's leaking. Normally on a coolant leak, you could just deal with it. Just carry some coolant, put in a half a gallon of coolant a week, not a big deal. But this leak is so extreme that it would cost me like hundreds of dollars of coolant per week. So that's number one issue, is how bad the leak is. It's not one of those slow leaks that you can just deal with. Number two issue that I'm concerned about is the potential cost of repair. The area that the leak is in is an area that's really hard to work on. And we're about to drive into the sun. About to get blinded. And from what I read online and watched on YouTube videos and stuff like that, people were talking about how much it cost them and talking about the quotes that they received and stuff like that. And it's really expensive. One of the ones that I read about said that they were told it would be 14 hours of labor just to access that area of the truck, because they have to remove a whole bunch of parts. They have to remove the turbo and all kinds of things just to get back into that area of the truck to work on anything back there. Even if it's like a simple $50 gasket to replace. Just getting into that area would be 14 hours of labor. And these mechanics these days are charging like $150, $200 an hour for labor. So you're talking upwards of like $2,500, $3,000 just in labor cost to work on that area of the engine. So that is really concerning. And then if it's an expensive part on top of that, you know, the part could be $1,000, $2,000. So, I mean, this could end up being like a $3,000 to $15,000 repair. Now, whenever I put the K-seal in here at Walmart, I'm going to top off the coolant. And if the K-seal doesn't have any effect on the leak, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to test and just see if it drains below that minimum level. Now, I know if I go over a steep grade, it will definitely drain below that minimum level. But just normal driving, it doesn't seem like it's going below that minimum level, because it didn't seem to matter whether I was idling the truck for an hour or driving 8 hours, 500 miles with an 80,000 pound load. It seems to be draining it down and stopping at that minimum level no matter what I do. So if that's the case, I could just deal with the leak and just not top off the coolant and let it just set at minimum level. And then if I ever have to drive over a mountain, it's going to suck it down below that minimum level, and I'm going to have to probably stop and let the engine cool halfway up the mountain or at the top of the mountain, depending on how steep the grade is, how long the grade is, and maybe add some coolant in. I don't know. There's a lot of things to consider. I still have a lot of stuff that I need to do. So we're going to try the K-seal, and we're going to test out if it leaks below that minimum line. And I'm going to try to get into a position where, like, whenever I get into a spot where I feel comfortable crawling around, digging around in the truck and trying to find the source of the leak, so I'm going to keep looking for the leak. Whenever I spent probably 2 hours last night and this morning trying to find the source of the leak, crawling underneath the truck and everything. And I can find the general area where it's coming from, but it's really, really hard to get into that area to see much of anything. One of the YouTube videos that I saw of a mechanic trying to find where the coolant leak was coming from in that same area, they got one of those borescope things, and even with one of those, they had difficulty maneuvering it around and getting back behind stuff to see. To give you some idea of how hard it is to get into that area. 31 miles to Walmart. What time is it? I'm blind from the sun shining in my eyes. Is it 6:40 something? 6:43 maybe? I don't know. Is somebody on the shoulder? Oh man, steer tire. I didn't get a good look at it, but it looked like the rubber was completely gone off the rim. I was too busy. I just saw it as I was turning my head, looking in my mirrors. I just saw it for a fraction of a second out of the corner of my eye. It looked like the front left steer was completely missing the rubber from the rim. Now that is completely understandable to park on the shoulder. Me, if I have a blowout or anything that I can limp it to an exit, I'm limping it to an exit. Now, blowing a steer, that's very different than blowing a drive tire. You're not limping a steer to an exit. But yeah, I won't say never. There's one time that I had a blowout and I parked on the shoulder and had a mechanic work on the tire on the shoulder. And that was like 20 years ago, whenever I was a line haul driver for XPO Logistics. Or not, they're XPO Logistics now, but it was Conway Western Express back then. I worked out of the Reno terminal, Reno, Nevada. And I blew out a tire driving across Sacramento one night. And pulled over to the shoulder of the interstate I-80. And they sent a mechanic out there to fix it. So yeah, there's one time that I had a mechanic work on something on the shoulder of the main road. But any issue I've had since then, I'll do the shoulder of the on-ramp. I've had mechanics work on stuff on the shoulder of the on-ramp. I remember just east of Memphis, Tennessee, I blew a tire on a USA truck trailer, and right where I blew the tire, there was an emergency pullout. So I pulled into that emergency pullout, which was this big, like, area way past the shoulder. So it was way off the road. And aside from that, almost all of my roadside repairs, I think I've had a roadside repair on the shoulder of the on-ramp once or twice, in that emergency pullout once. And then almost all of my other roadside repairs have been at customer locations. Like picking up a trailer and it has a flat tire. You know, I get there to do a drop and hook and the trailer's got a flat tire. Or I'll just limp it to a shop. I'll just drive it to a shop. It is really, really dangerous to stop on the shoulder. It really needs to be a true emergency to park on a shoulder because of how dangerous it is. Oh my goodness, I can't see anything. That sun's shining right in my eyes. I can't read my ELD. I can't see my phone. All right, let's see. It's 6:48, 26 miles. So yeah, I'm gonna have to sit around for 45 minutes waiting on Walmart to open. So whenever I get there and I park, I'm gonna check the coolant level. I can tell you right now that it doesn't seem to be leaking much below the minimum level, because when I started driving, it was already at minimum level. And if it leaks much below where it was at, then the coolant alarm will go off, the low coolant alarm. So whatever it's leaking out of, it's only leaking once it gets up to a certain pressure. And when the coolant level gets low, it's not able to get up to that pressure. Now, I'm sure if I were to go over a mountain and the engine got really hot, it would be able to pressure the system up high enough to leak more coolant. And that ABS light is still on. I'm going to have to put the trailer back into a dealer again. I don't want to put a trailer into just a random shop for ABS. I've had a couple of mechanics that were decent at troubleshooting ABS at like TA Petros and Loves, but the majority of them, they're basically just tire mechanics. Maybe they've been trained on replacing brakes or some other component, but yeah, most of those mechanics at TA Petro and Loves are horrible mechanics. There are a couple of them I ran into that were really good, though. They are rare. So I'm really stressed out about the whole coolant situation, but I am like sitting here driving without the coolant alarm going off, knowing that the coolant leak is stopping once it gets down to the minimum level. And I've got a max weight load. This is an 80,000 pound load. Yeah, I'm not going over any mountains right now, just tiny little rolling hills. But this is basically it's giving me the confidence that I could continue driving with this leak if I needed to. But man, I hope the K-seal works. And I'm watching the load alerts. There's been some decent loads pop up on, you know what? What's crazy is I had a load alert last night of a load picking up in Nashville going back to Omaha, a Google load. But it picked up at like 9 a.m. today. It picked up before And I was sitting there thinking about it. Even if I could make the pickup appointment, would I want to go back to Omaha? Do I want to do that? If I could have made the pickup appointment, I probably would have booked that load because it was paying like I want to say $3.36 a mile on the full rate. I get about 70% of that. What's the mileage on this? This is just a little under 800 miles, like 775 miles, I think, is the paid miles on this. So we'll just use 800 as a ballpark. And at 336 a mile, we'll say that's somewhere around 240 a mile. That guy's flying. 240 a mile, 800 miles is. Sorry, I'm holding my hand up, blocking the sun so that I can see, and I'm trying to watch my mirrors and watch in front of me. I can't see very well in front of me because of how bright the sun is, and I'm trying to do math, so bear with me. What was that? 240 a mile, 800 miles. That's $1,600 plus a little under half. So that'd be like $2,300 gross to the truck to drive back. That'd be nice. And then I could just grab another one of these loads because the agent that has these loads is just constantly posting them. There were like several of these loads per week that he was posting, and they weren't getting booked really quick. They were sitting on the load board for a long time because they're not very good loads. So I could just go turn around and come right back and make another, 14. I think I'm getting about $1,400 on this load is what I'm making on it. 14, maybe $1,500. All right, let's see. Let me block the sun and see if I can 657. Is that right? And I'm 17 miles away. I just realized I forgot to turn off the bunk heater. I have to remember to turn that off when I get to Walmart. I think it's an S-Bar. I'm not 100% which brand I have. It's factory installed. It works on the control panel in the sleeper. I think it's an S-Bar. That thing is absolutely amazing. I have been, when we had one of those Arctic blasts a few years back, where like it got below 0 degrees all the way down into like Oklahoma, I took a load to Williston, North Dakota. during one of those Arctic blasts. That's the coldest temperature I think I've ever been in. It was up in North Dakota. It was negative 27 degrees Fahrenheit was the coldest I recall seeing. Negative 27 Fahrenheit. That is not wind chill. That's actual air temperature. The wind chill was probably like negative 50 or something. If you've never been in cold like that, then it's hard to explain to somebody what it's like. It is so cold that you can't go outside with any exposed skin. Like, yeah, a little bit of exposed skin. Like, not every single, like if the wind was blowing, yeah, you probably had to have every inch of your body covered. But without the wind blowing too hard, it was hard to breathe in air that cold. And like your skin would go numb instantly. So yeah, every time I would step outside in those temperatures, I would have to bundle up and have gloves on and head covering. I had a balaclava that I was wearing. And in those temperatures, that bunk heater could get it so hot inside the truck that it would make you sweat. That little S-Bar diesel bunk heater is phenomenal. And the only issue that I've ever had with it was that in those really cold temperatures, the fuel lines froze. The fuel lines going to the bunk heater froze. And I was eventually able to get them to unfreeze by like running the main engine and the APU and all kinds of stuff. I can't remember. I think the temperature actually warmed up a little bit as well, and they eventually the lines. Oh no, I remember what I did to fix the problem. I started using Diesel 1. It was not easy to find Diesel 1 back during that Arctic blast. Because most places, when it gets below freezing temperatures, because diesel, the freezing point of diesel is the same as water. It's 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Diesel 2, the paraffin-based diesel that everybody uses, is it has the same freezing point as water, 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So if it gets below 32, your diesel will start crystallizing and gelling up. It takes a long time, so it's not something you really have to worry a lot about as long as you're, driving and you're putting more diesel in on a regular basis. But if the truck is sitting for a long period of time under 32 degrees, it'll eventually gel up. But what most places do instead of using Diesel 1 is they will treat their Diesel 2. So whenever it gets really cold temperatures, you'll see these truck stops advertising that they have treated Diesel 2. And treated Diesel 2 doesn't work very well. Yeah, it may allow it to go down to like 25 degrees, 20 degrees. I've seen them advertise that it's good all the way down to like 5 or 10 degrees Fahrenheit, but that has not been my experience. Like, I've used windshield washer fluid that was rated for like negative 30 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's like 15 degrees Fahrenheit outside and my windshield washer fluid's frozen solid. So yeah, the advertised temperatures on a lot of products that we use are inaccurate. .9 miles. I'm curious as to what the coolant level is going to be at whenever we get there. It was just a hair over minimum when I left the weigh station. If it's at the exact same spot, then I'll be happy. Yeah, JQL load to Omaha sounds pretty good. Because worst case scenario, I could just deadhead from Omaha to the house. It's like 500 miles. But that's a single drive shift. I could just do a single drive shift to the house. It'll cost me half a tank of fuel, which is like $300. If I needed to get home from Omaha. But yeah, if I see another JQL load going to Omaha, I'm going to snag that thing up, drive to Omaha, and then grab another one of these loads coming right back to here. And then if I can get another JQL load going back to Omaha, I'll just do that over and over. And for a week or two, and then get to the house. That would be really sweet. But the JQL loads are so intermittent, and they're so hard to get whenever they do actually pop up, that it is highly unlikely I'd be able to do that. Man, this is really annoying. One of the things I hate about this truck is that air blows out of the vents even if you turn the blower all the way down to 0. So what I have to do is I have to adjust the temperature, because right now it is blowing out incredibly hot air, and it's 86.7 degrees inside the cab right now because the vents are blowing out so much air even though I have the blower turned off. So I'm just turning it all the way over to cold so it'll stop blowing such hot air. You know, that's something else that I could potentially test. I don't know exactly how the heater functions. I'm quite certain that the heater uses the coolant system. So if I turn the heater off, I wonder if that stops the flow of coolant to the heater. So I could maybe I should research how that works, because that's something I could test. Is I could see if the leak happens if I'm not running the heater, and that would help me limit it down to it's something to do with the heater. right, got 2 miles until our exit. Got a car on the shoulder. I see somebody standing on the right side of the car. Exit 86, that's us. The Walmart is
Take exit 86 for US 41 alternate toward Hopkinsville, Fort Campbell.
a couple miles away from the interstate. It's not like right off the interstate, but it was there are several Walmarts that I'm driving by, and this one was like the most accessible from the interstate. Most of them required me to like
Take exit 86.
drive pretty far off the interstate and go pretty deep into some towns. I couldn't find one that was like right off the interstate.
In a quarter mile, slide right onto the ramp to US 41 alternate south, Fort Campbell Boulevard.
Three truck stops at least. Just a second here. How far is this? I see somebody standing on the left side of this damn thing. They're getting into their truck right now. It's really hard to tell how far off the road they were driving into the sun. The sun is so blinding. People on the shoulder are just so incredibly trusting. Just walking out the roadway, fully expecting that people are going to move over for them. People are going to see them. There was some news article that I read about somebody that was broke down on the side of the road and a truck driver killed him. The truck driver did not change lanes, just stayed in the right lane for whatever reason. Maybe they couldn't move over, whatever. It happens. I've done it. I do it all the time. And the person just walked out from in front of their car into the roadway without checking, just walked right out in front of the truck as it was driving by, and the truck splatted them. Yeah, people are just, it just, you know, I think it's just a survival trait that we have, that we become so complacent. We can normalize just about anything. And I think it's just a really good survival trait. But it also leads us to where we kind of stop. What is that smell? Doesn't smell like coolant. It smells like some kind of gas, like I don't know, almost like a sulfur. Like it almost has that rotten egg sulfur smell, just a little bit. Not bad, but just a tiny bit. I don't know, maybe it's something I just drove past. Anytime I hear something or smell something, I try to figure out what the hell it is. Is it something wrong with the truck? All right, a mile away. And based on the satellite view, I'm going to pull in the spot that I've got picked out to pull in, and then there should be enough room for me to spin around, and then I should be able to park along the curb at the back of the store near the shop entrance.
In a quarter mile, turn left onto Segler Drive.
All right, we're going to go ahead and grab the left lane. We're a quarter mile away from our turn. Is our turn at the light? Yeah, our turn's at the light. I can't believe how many Walmarts have like stopped being 24/7. Like it used to be normal that nothing was open 24/7. Grocery stores, Walmarts, none of that stuff was open 24/7. And then all of a sudden, Walmart started going 24/7. And then all their competition, all the grocery stores went 24/7. And now we're seeing a reversal of that over the last few years where everything is shutting down at night. Which shopping in the middle of the night wasn't that great anyway. Like grocery stores were typically full of stalkers, not stalkers, stalkers, people stocking the shelves. So you couldn't even walk down the aisles. It was a pain to just maneuver around in the store. Truck entrance. Well, I'm a truck. So I'm in the right spot. I love the signage. Truck entrance, truck entrance, truck entrance.
Turn right to stay on Segler Drive, then your destination will be on the left.
I could park in between those two trucks, but I don't want to do that. That's not
Your destination is on the
a
left.
good place to park. If I was not leased to Landstar, I would park right there. But leased to Landstar, those people are technically parked in the middle of the roadway. And Landstar has very strict parking policies. I'm going to park along this curb back here. The plan is there should be a spot where I can flip around right there. See that big area in front of the docks? I'm going to turn around right there. And then I'm going to park along this curb right here. Not next to the fire hydrant. I would park in a dock since I'm not going to be here for very long. But last time I did that, the Walmart driver got mad. And he was like, just park along the curb. Don't park in our docks. You can't do that, man. We need to be able to go in and out of those docks. We're on tight schedules. He just sat there and ranted and complained unnecessarily for like 2 minutes. I was like, I'm sorry, man. I appreciate it. I just ran in there for 15 minutes. I'm leaving. Oh, man. Oh, this is a really tight jackknife. My tractor is almost touching the trailer. Go really, really, really slow because we're pivoting those tires. Those tires. We got an 77,000 pound load. We have a really heavy load. So pivoting tires like that on a load this heavy is not good. So this is the spot that I picked out on the satellite view to park at. This is not good. I am blocking the fire hydrant. Oh, I hit a tree limb. All right, now we're far enough away from the fire hydrant. All right, this is the spot. We're going to hang out. Change over to sleeper berth. Let's check the coolant level. Let me grab the flashlight just in case it's hard to see what the coolant level is. Okay, that's really weird. I guess I didn't put the cap on all the way. There's bubbles at the cap, and it's completely full. The coolant is basically completely full. Let me loosen up the cap a little bit. See if the coolant level goes down. Okay, yeah, I'm really confused right now. Um, just a second here. I'm not seeing any leak. Yeah, this is really bizarre. But it looks like the cap was letting a little bit of pressure out. So maybe that's the reason it didn't leak. And I thought that the coolant was down at like the minimum level when I started driving, and now it's like completely full. That is so bizarre. You know what it might have been? I might have just been mistaken because it was hard to see what the coolant level was. I was using my flashlight and shining it around in there trying to see what the coolant level was, but maybe I was just seeing some line and I was confused as to what it was. So basically it looks like whenever I filled up the coolant this morning and then idled it for an hour, it did not actually drain coolant while it was idling. It looks like it didn't actually leak coolant while it was idling, and I was mistaken on it actually draining or leaking the coolant while it was idling. And then the entire drive over here, the engine temperature pressure never really got very high. We didn't go over any decent hills or mountains or anything like that. So it looks like it's only leaking whenever the engine gets fairly strained. I have to go. Which reminds me, let me turn this bunk heater off. I can hear that thing blowing. Part of the reason it was 86 degrees inside here. Okay, so that is kind of a relief. That tells me that it's whatever's leaking requires quite a bit of pressure to leak. pressure or temperature or both? And I suspect that it's pressure because temperature wise, even going over the rolling hills in Missouri with this 80,000 pound load, the temperature never got to a point where the fan kicked on. The temperature just basically sat at 170 degrees, which is like the normal operating temperature of the engine whenever it's driving down the road is like 170 degrees. It maybe got up to 180 degrees climbing some of the steep hills, but the temperature just basically hardly moved at all. Even whenever the engine was under some pretty big strain going over some steep hills. There were some hills that were so steep I was going like 40 miles an hour up them. You know, and we're at about 70. You know what? Let's not guess. Let's check cat scale. I don't think that they sent me an email because I checked my email. Let me see if I have a where how the hell do I check my boxes? Where is the option on my mail to look at? There it is. All right, so it's in there, but I need to find out what all right. So all right, I got it. I'm pulling it up. It's downloading. So the last weigh that I did was 12,160 pounds on the steers, 32,480 on the drives, and 34,180 on the trailer. And I just I'll explain that all that in a minute. So that my total weight of the truck, my total gross weight, and this was at a little less than 3/4 of a tank of fuel. So I was like 70, 80 gallons shy of fuel, which fuel weighs about 7 pounds per gallon. So 7 times 7 is 49, 490. I had about 500 more pounds of fuel once I topped off fuel. So I was at 78,820 pounds. And so my initial weigh, let's go look at my other weigh ticket. That was my reweigh. So let me explain the scale tickets. My very first weigh was 12,100 steers, 31,540 drives, 35,160 on the trailer tandems. So what is legal weight? So first of all, let's talk about the steer axle. A lot of people misunderstand like weight limits. They think that the weight limit on your steers is 12,000 pounds. That's not true. The weight limit on almost all single axles is 20,000 pounds in every state. Why do people think that the limit is 12,000 pounds on their steer axles? Because of manufacturer limits. I don't think it's as common anymore, but it used to be extremely common in the trucking industry, and it might still be common in the trucking industry, that these mega carriers buying these massive amounts of trucks, the way that they spec them out is they go cheap on everything. They the options they choose, they maximize for fuel efficiency, which is a terrible way to spec out a truck because this is going to turn into an hour-long rant about the stupidity of like a lot of things. Like people just don't think through like the full, like they don't look at the big picture. They get narrowly focused in one little thing. let me talk about this for just a second, and then we'll get back on track. They they spec out these trucks for fuel mileage. What does that mean whenever you spec out a truck for fuel mileage? It means that your gear ratio is low and you reduce the horsepower of the truck, and it's basically optimized for driving at like 65 miles per hour on flat land. Now, that sounds good in theory to save money in fuel because fuel is a massive cost on these large carriers. If they can save like a half a mile per gallon across their fleet, that could save them millions of dollars. So they thought this was a great idea to spec out all their trucks at this, optimized for fuel efficiency. But does that actually save them fuel? No, it doesn't. Have you driven across this country? Is there like a lot of flat land? Even when you're driving across a place that's known to be flat land, there is nowhere in this country that is just flat land. You're always going up and down elevation. There's almost no flat land for an extended period of time in this country. So if you optimize your truck for driving on flat land, you're optimizing it for probably like 3% of your driving. And I'm just making up that percent. You're optimizing it for like the least amount of driving that you're doing on the truck. And then for everything else that you're doing, the truck is not optimal. So I don't know. It's just beyond stupid the way people make decisions and they don't look at like the scope of what they're like. It is just really dumb. Like, it really frustrates me how stupid some people are. But anyway, specking these trucks out at the minimums to save every penny they can and crunch all this stuff. One of the things that they do whenever they're specking out these mega carrier fleets is they get the cheapest axles. So like the cheap steer axle is only rated for 12,000 pounds. That's the reason that there is a myth that your steer axle weight limit is 12,000 pounds, is because a lot of trucks used to be limited to 12,000 pounds on the steer axle because of the manufacturing limits of the axle itself. The actual weight limit of a single axle, whether it's a steer or a drive, it doesn't matter, is 20,000 pounds in pretty much every state that I'm aware of. So my steer axle is rated for 13,200 pounds. And my steer tires are rated for 6,500 pounds each. 13,000 pounds. No, wait a second. I would have to double check that. I know that my steer axle is legal for at a minimum 13,000 pounds. I know the axle itself is rated for 13.2. And the tires, I thought the tires were rated for more than what the axle was rated for. But now I'm thinking that they were rated for 6,500 pounds each, so they're actually rated for 13,000. Anyway, I would have to go double check that. But yeah, that's usually what limits your axle weight is manufacturing limits. So my steer axle is rated for 13,000 pounds. That's my steer axle limit. If I had some really heavy duty, like heavy haul axles, then it would be 20,000 pounds. So anyway, back to the weight. So 12,100 on the steers, 31,540 on the drives, 35,160 on the trailer. So drive tandems, 31,540, trailer tandems, 35,160. The weight limit on tandems, 34,000 pounds. So I was 1,160 pounds over on the trailer. So which way do I need to slide the tandems? I need to shift weight to the tractor from the trailer. So I needed to slide the tandems back. So when I started out, I was on hole 5. The trailer tandems were locked in at hole 5. So I thought it's somewhere in the ballpark of about 250 pounds per hole, but it really depends on how they load the trailer. And the load ended about, I would say 10 feet from the back of the trailer is where the load ended. So the last 10 feet of the trailer didn't have anything in it. So I thought that it was actually going to be a little bit more than 250 pounds that it would shift per hole because there wasn't anything in the last 10 feet of the trailer. So I moved it 4 notches, thinking that that would move probably around 13, 14, maybe even 1,500 pounds. So I went from hole 5 to hole 9. And now let's look at the second weigh ticket. And what happened when I moved from hole 5 to hole 9? My steer axle went to 12,160. So I gained, what was that, 60 pounds on the steer axle. Drive axle went to 32,480. And the trailer axle went to 34,180. So I was still 180 pounds over on the trailer. It did not shift as much weight as I thought it would. It shifted almost exactly 250 pounds per hole. So what did I do at that point? I shifted it 2 more holes backwards. I went from hole 9 to hole 11, and I did not bother scaling it again after that. I was 100% confident that the weight was legal. I wasn't going to pay $5 to weigh again. It was $15 for the initial weigh and then $5 for the reweigh. I need to think about what I'm going to buy while I'm in there. I'm not the type of person that likes to just browse a store, a grocery store or something. I don't like to walk around and browse. I like to go in there with a plan and just knock it out. So how much milk am I gonna buy? I have no idea how long I'm gonna be out over the truck, out over the road before I get home. I have to get a DOT inspection done by the end of the month. Now I can get a DOT inspection done just about anywhere in the country, but I really do not like getting DOT inspections done outside of Oklahoma City because of Landstar policies. So pretty much anytime I need to get a DOT inspection done, I will get to the house to get it done at the house. And I have to get it done by like the end of November. I think it's like November 28th is my deadline. And you have a 2-week window to get it done in. So I have to get it done between like the 14th and the 28th. Now I can go past the 28th, but if I go past the 28th, they'll put me out of service. So like if I go home and I set at the house for a month and it goes past the 28th, then before I can leave the house, I will have to go get a DOT inspection done. Now, when Landstar puts you out of service, that just takes away your ability to book a load. It doesn't mean you can't drive the truck. You can still drive the truck around. You just can't book a load when they put you out of service. I don't know what the term is called whenever they shut you down to the point where you can't drive the truck, but there are situations where they will shut you down where you can't drive the truck. The DOT inspection is one of them. If you get a Landstar DOT inspection done and you fail the inspection, then you can't move the truck. That's the reason I don't like getting DOT inspections done anywhere but Oklahoma City at very specific places that are not shady, because all of the Landstar certified inspectors know what the policy is, and they know that they can force you to pay them to do stuff. And these are commission based mechanics. That is one of my biggest gripes with Landstar. My two biggest gripes with Landstar is, number one, the trailer utilization department. They are just a bunch of morons. And number two is their DOT inspection policy. They're really putting us. They're giving us as hostages to commission based mechanics. They're making us hostages of commission based mechanics, where the mechanics, if they're having a bad day, they can just tell you that this needs to be replaced, and it's typically whatever it is that they prefer to replace, that they make the most money on, that's the easiest for them to do. And I've talked with a lot of TA Petro and Love's mechanics and Conlin tire mechanics and places like that, and I've told them to their face like the problem I have with them, and the reason I don't like going to them and stuff like that, and they're like, yeah, they'll all admit to it. I've never had a mechanic not admit to it. They all, it's like it's not a secret. I've had them sit there and laugh and joke about it and be like, yeah, so and so likes to replace slack adjusters. So if you get a DOT inspection done by him, if he's not busy, he's probably going to tell you your slack adjusters need to be replaced. And they'll sit there and laugh about it. It pisses me off so much. 7:40. We got 20 minutes. Okay, what am I going to get in? All right, let's think about what I'm going to get. So we're going to get the K seal. How many gallons of coolant am I going to get? It's $8 a gallon. I'm getting at least two. I'm just trying to think of how many more gallons beyond two am I going to get. I think I should get 4 gallons. I do have an issue of storage capacity on the truck. Like, I can't be going and getting like 12 gallons of coolant. Like, where am I going to put it? So 4 gallons of coolant. I can fit 2 gallons in my side compartments. The other 2 gallons, I'm just going to have to put underneath my table in the truck or something. Um, so we'll get the K seal, 4 gallons of coolant. Four gallons of milk. The most milk I can carry in the truck is 6 gallons. Actually, I could maybe carry 8 gallons. 4 gallons. I can fit 4 gallons in my regular like factory refrigerator, but it takes up all of the room in the refrigerator. I can't put anything else in the refrigerator. And I can fit 2 gallons in my cooler in between my seat. Um, and I could potentially fit 4 gallons into that cooler, but yeah, I'm not gonna try to buy that much milk. Uh-oh, here comes a delivery truck, a local delivery driver. It's milk, Borden milk. They got their tandem slid all the way to the rear. All right, moment of truth. Let's see if Borden has any issues making this turn with me parked here. Nope, no issues. One of the Walmart employees just showed up. All right, let's think about this. So 2 bottles of K-Seal, because when I researched this on K-Seal's website, I looked at like the capacities, like it's so many ounces per gallons of coolant. And based on the gallons of coolant that my truck holds, I need to use 2 bottles of K-Seal. So 2 bottles of K-Seal, 4 gallons of coolant, 4 gallons of milk. I'm having difficulty thinking of anything else. Um, oh, cereal. I'm down to my last. I've got like half a bag of cereal left. I brought 3 boxes of cereal, the Walmart brand Frosted Flakes. You know, that's something I've switched over to generic brand of pretty much everything because of, prices have gotten insane. Um, and a lot of the generic brands have gotten good. Like something that is hard, it's like kind of mind-boggling. Like it's really hit or miss with the generic brand stuff. Some of it just is terrible. Some of it's like inedible. You take a bite of it and you just spit it out. Like those burritos. Like those burritos are disgusting. The hot dogs, chicken hot dogs that I bought at Walmart, actually pretty good. And that's just microwaving them. I haven't like cooked them in an oven or an air fryer or anything like that so they have a crisp outer shell. Microwaving them where they have a mushy outer shell, they're actually pretty good. I still prefer like the State Fair honey glazed ones. Um, but the generic brand Walmart chicken corn dog things, they're actually really good. And the cinnamon toast crunch cereal, the generic brand of that Walmart has, is actually better than regular cinnamon toast crunch. It tastes about exactly the same, except regular cinnamon toast crunch um, is mostly air, and it gets really mushy really fast. Whereas the Walmart brand doesn't have a whole lot of air in it. It's a more like sturdy, more crunchy, and it doesn't get soggy as fast. I prefer it. I think it's a lot. I think it's like twice as good as cinnamon toast crunch. Uh, so the generic brand cereal is pretty good. The Frosted Flakes generic brand is pretty good. I would say it tastes a little bit different, but it's almost on par or about on par with Frosted Flakes. I haven't done a side by side comparison, so my memory may be fuzzy on it. But I was incredibly surprised at how good the Cinnamon Toast Crunch generic brand was. I actually prefer it to Cinnamon Toast Crunch. All right, cereal. What else? What else? What else? What else? Is there anything I need or I'm missing in the truck? I cannot think of anything. And now what I'm sitting here thinking is what am I going to do about the K-seal? This leak basically did not happen. The engine basically did not leak on the way over here. So if I put the K-seal in and then go and drive over to the delivery, then it may not get the engine may not get high enough pressure and temperature to leak at all. The K-seal is only good for a certain amount of time, and then it just kind of like loses its potency. So right now, I don't even know if I'm going to put the K-seal in the engine at the moment. Because like what could happen is I could put the K-seal in right now, and then the rest of the drive from now to Lebanon may be all flat land and it doesn't leak at all. And then my next load that I get may be a really light load and I don't go over any major mountains and it may not leak at all. And then I may go to the house, and I may go 2 or 3 months without the engine being put under enough strain to leak, because I rarely ever haul loads this heavy. This is abnormal for me to haul an 80,000 pound load. So I think I'm just going to buy the K-seal, but I'm not going to put it in right now. I'll wait until I'm going to be in a position where it's actually going to leak. I'm surprised I'm not getting any load alerts at 7:51 a.m. Right around 8 a.m. is the busy time. Let me check my load alerts, make sure they're enabled. That's weird. I checked my load alert inbox and it's not showing the load alerts that I got yesterday. The Landstar app is really janky. Sometimes I just stop getting load alerts, and I've restarted the app, logged out, logged back in, uninstalled, reinstalled, like done all kinds of stuff, and it just, I don't know what is wrong with it, but it usually eventually just starts working again within a day or two. So, all right. So I have to completely rethink the coolant situation. I thought the coolant was leaking with the truck just idling, but I was mistaken. I just wasn't reading the coolant level correctly. Because I idled it for an hour this morning before I started driving, and I thought it was down at the minimum level, but it wasn't. It was actually still full, because it's full right now, and I haven't added coolant since then. So yeah, it appears to only be leaking coolant when the engine pressure and temperature get high. Basically going over a steep hill that puts the truck under strain. Hmm. All right, what time is it? 7:54. We got 6 minutes. And let me see what the distance is to the delivery location. 87 miles. It's an O'Reilly's warehouse, where O'Reilly's distribution center, and I'm carrying a load of O'Reilly's branded DEF diesel exhaust fluid. There's a Pilot truck stop pretty close to where I'm delivering, and that's where I have my shower credits. So that's where I plan on stopping at after I deliver the load, waiting for my next load. And I was expecting that there was going to be a lot of load alerts. Like, this area was popping off whenever I first booked the load. I was getting calls from agents, text messages, and all kinds of stuff. I thought there was going to be just tons of load alerts yesterday and today, and it just slowed down a lot. But anyway, I'm going to go do some shopping in here, and then I'll go make the delivery, and then I'll start looking for another load. And hopefully we don't have any issues finding a load out of the Nashville area. Uh, from what I've seen, it looks promising. It looks like it's going to be a decent area to be looking for. Ooh, I just got a text message. Would you be interested in a load picking up from Louisville, Kentucky, going to Alpharetta, Georgia, 3,800 pounds, $1,450, $387 a mile, hazmat? Call or text to book it. Thank you. No, I'm not interested in a cheap hazmat load. Now, you're saying 387 a mile, that's not cheap. Well, it's a short mileage run. It's only paying, 1,500 bucks. And the lower the mileage is, the less fuel surcharge I get. So the closer I get to 65% instead of 70%. On really big mileage runs, the fuel surcharge gets so high that my percentage actually gets up to like 72, 73%. But on a short mileage run like that, I basically get no fuel surcharge. So I'll get 65% of the $1,400, or was it 1,500? I think it was 1,485. Was it? Um, okay, that was one offering me a load to Laredo. That's not the one. Hazmat load for $227 a mile, going to Laredo. Oh, this is the same asshole that sent me the text message about the Laredo load. Cheap ass Laredo load, 227 a mile hazmat load. Now I only get about 70% of that 227 a mile. So that's a load that pays like $1.58 a mile hazmat load to Laredo, Texas. And now they just sent me a text message on that. It's $1,450. So out of that $1,500, I get about 65%, which is 650 plus 325 would be was that $975 for a 2-day load? That's less than $500 a day. That is insanely cheap. Like I try to run at $1,000 a day, and they're offering me a load that's paying less than $500 a day. That's company driver money, and that's not even good company driver money. After all your expenses, you're making nothing. It's really cheap. So yeah, that particular agent keeps texting me, offering me really shitty loads. So I'm gonna go into Walmart. Um, I'll go ahead and stop the video. I was thinking about whether or not to pause it and then give you an update once I get back, but I'm not going to be putting the stuff in or anything like that right now, I don't think. So I don't know. Should I put it in? I don't know. I'll go ahead and make the delivery and think about it. But anyway, have a good one. Bye.